Hey guys, Brian Hilliard here, author of the best-selling book, Networking Like a Pro. And I got to tell you, I am fired up here today because we have ourselves a special guest. Her name is Ginny Carter. She is a business book ghostwriter and a book coach. Ginny, thanks so much for joining us. I'm really looking forward to this talk today.
I'm delighted to be here. Thank you.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, listen, one of the things that we kind of talked about was this idea, obviously, that you obviously are a book coach. You do some ghostwriting for some of the different speakers, coaches, experts, things like that. And that really caught my eye because a lot of the folks who I personally work with, obviously people who maybe are listening here today, they are thinking about writing a book. And maybe they've run into some challenge or some issue or some whatever the case may be. Talk to us a little bit about how you kind of, your process. So like when you first engage somebody, what have you found in general to be like either a roadblock or an issue, or give us a feel for how you have kind of, when someone says, I want to write a book, and you're like, okay, where do you go from there? What's your starting point, if you don't mind?
Yeah, well, when people get in touch with me, as you can imagine, they've always got a reason why they've not written a book already. Otherwise they wouldn't be going to a ghostwriter or a book coach. They already have the book out there, it'd be on the shelf already. So actually, it's one of the first questions I ask them. I said, what's holding you back? And the number one answer, I mean, there are various answers I'm given, but the number one answer is usually lack of time, which is hardly a surprising answer because writing a book is a big project, and most of the people that I work with, the experts, coaches, consultants, people, they're busy people. They're busy doing lots of things. They're busy serving their clients. They're busy building their businesses, maybe doing speaking and so on. So that it's completely understandable that they find it hard to envisage how they're going to fit writing a book into their schedule. And to be honest with you, I think it's one of those kind of things that there isn't really any getting around the fact that you do have to spend the time on it. But I think what some people get overwhelmed by is when they see it as one big lump of a task, and they don't realise that actually by chipping away at it every day, every week, you can actually get a whole book written. And I see that with my own eyes. I see my coaching clients write their books, and I'm always in awe of the fact that they do that. But many people do manage to write a book, and there's various ways that you can make time to do that.
Well, I think part of it too, I've written a few books myself. I think part of it is the idea that you have to make it like anything else worth getting in life, worth getting good in life. You have to make it a priority, right? Like, you have to, like one of the things I tell people, and I didn't make this up, I think Brian Tracy or maybe Tony Robbins said, it says, networking is the one thing that you can't be efficient with. I thought it was an interesting point. Networking is the one thing you can't be efficient with. You can efficiently build a bridge. You can efficiently get to the grocery store. You can efficiently buy groceries while you're at the store, but you can't efficiently build relationships. That's not how relationships works, and networking is the business equivalent of relationship building. And it's interesting where, people, they come into you and they say, oh, well, I need to write a book, and then they don't have time. Like, what's your initial response to that? How do you get people to maybe see that it needs to be a priority, or understand that it needs to be a priority? If you don't mind using my language, be a priority, or like, how do you do that?
Yeah, well, when people work with me as a ghostwriter, of course, they don't have to make the time. So that's the benefit of that for them. But when they want to write the book themselves, the way I usually encourage them to prioritize it is to make it a diary thing. Make it part of your to-do list for the day. Write 500 words, finish that chapter. The way I plan in my book writing is that I have a Google Calendar and I block out time on there for writing. Different people have different methods. It could be that you're going to set aside a particular time of day to write, or I think also as well, I think people sometimes underestimate the power of the instinct in writing. So there are times when you just kind of feel fired up and you want to write and just take advantage of those moments. I also think as well that we naturally make time for the things that we find rewarding and enjoyable. We don't even think of it as making time for them. We just do them. And there are lots of ways that you can make writing a book a rewarding experience. And the key one, I think, the thing that was the real game changer for me when I realized this, was that you can see it as a way of understanding your expertise more fully. So if you can get really curious about your knowledge and expertise and approach writing the book and exploring that in a kind of curious way, without too much expectation on yourself and too many burdens of, oh, this has got to be brilliant, you can really enjoy writing it, because you'll discover things about it that you never thought about before. You may come up with an idea for a new program or a new direction for your work. And so this is just one really, really powerful way of making time, in a way, because actually time makes itself when you get into it like that.
That's interesting, making it a priority. And then, like you just said, being able to have it where the people themselves look at it almost as an exercise in doing something else. That's really interesting. I like that. Let me ask a kind of a related question. Obviously, you're a coach. You work with other people who are doing this. Talk to us about how you work. So somebody comes and says, listen, you know what? I'm interested in writing a book. I'm not looking to do the ghostwriting, because the ghostwriting, that we understand. I'm not looking to do the ghostwriting, but I'm interested in writing a book. Like, how do you work with people? I'm not trying to get into stuff, but just how do you work with people? Is it a weekly call? Is it a bi-weekly? Actually, no, darn it. I've been trying to say this better. Fortnightly. It's a term we don't use here a lot, but I know it's over there a lot. And I actually do like it. Is it weekly, fortnightly? Is it monthly? What's our deal?
Yeah. So the way I always start is not actually with regular calls, but having like a planning session at the beginning.
Okay.
And I find where so many people go wrong actually, and one of the stumbling blocks that you were talking about with getting going on a book is not really understanding the book that you're writing. So you get so far with it,
that's a good one.
You don't really kind of get any further with it. So what we do is we plan the strategic side of the book. So it's all about like, who's the book for? What's the core message of the book? What is it that you as an author want to achieve with it? What do you want to get out of it? What do you want your readers to get out of it? And all of that kind of top level stuff. And then we look into the content, and we kind of create a table of contents. So it's like, well, what topic do you want to cover first, and what second, and so on. So by the end of that, they've got a really good idea as to why they're writing this book, what it's all about, who it's for, and what it consists of. So once you've got that, you've got a really good starting point. And then the way I work is we'll have a fortnightly call. And it's funny, I didn't realise that was a British phrase, actually.
Well, I don't know if it's British specifically. It's definitely not American. But like the thing is over here, they say it incorrectly. They say bi-weekly and they mean fortnightly. And yeah, so it's confusing. So when I heard that, I don't know if it was this year or last year. And I was like, oh, that's brilliant. I got to just remember to use it.
It is a word, actually. Think about it. It's funny. It's only when you think about it you realise fortnight. Well, where does that come from? I'm sure there must be some for it. But I work on usually a fortnightly basis. So it depends, of course, on my clients' availability. Sometimes things don't go according to plan. But roughly once a fortnight, we'll get together and they'll do some writing in the meanwhile. I'll look at it and comment on it for them, so they have some feedback to go on. Then we'll have a chat in the call about any problems they've got, anything they're not sure about, what they're going to do next, sort of plan the next chapter, and go on like that. And I think the value of having a regular session, the feedback I get anyway, is that it just keeps them going. It's very difficult to keep motivated on your own writing a book. I mean, you obviously have cracked that one with all the books you've written, but many people find it really difficult. And just knowing that you've got a session with your coach in a week's time where you need to get on and write that next chapter, otherwise you're not going to have a lot to talk about. So so that's really important.
That's awesome. It's a little bit like having almost like a trainer at a gym, what I mean? Yeah. Where you're talking to people and doing that. What's an expectation? Because this is a question that people ask me. They're like, Brian, you've written these books. How long does it take you? Well, it's taken, my average is probably 90 days personally. I don't know that for a fact, but let's say for the average, let's do the old median, okay? Take out the top, take out the bottom, median number. So if I've written 7, you take out 2, left with 5, you've got 90 days is what I would tell you. Yeah. The process that you work with people, fortnightly. Okay, so I'm hearing, and I'm just trying to flesh this out because I think this is really important. So you sit down, they say, I want to write a book. They come back to you and they're like, oh, excuse me. You sit down and you say, I want to write a book. You come back to them and be like, all right, well, let's do a planning session. Maybe that's an hour. Let's just say for sake of discussion, I can't imagine it's too much longer than that. Let's say it's an hour. Okay. Then you have this planning session. And after that, you're like, okay, let's meet every other week and let's sit down and have this. What's a good expectation in terms of a business book? You know, I guess it would make a difference on how many chapters and how many pages. I don't know, standard one, maybe 200 pages, whatever that might be, 15 chapters. 3 months, 5 months, what can people expect in terms of getting through it when working with you?
Yeah, well, it's largely down to them really, and how much time they want to put into it. So how much of their time are they going to devote to the book versus all of the other things they have going on. So I usually find it takes people any time from 6 months to a year.
Okay.
That's the average.
Okay.
And so I think it kind of depends on your own personality as well. If you're writing a book, you know, I mean, you're obviously a guy who really likes to just crack on with things and get things done quickly, and you feel very motivated to do that. And I would imagine that if you let it drag on for too long, you'd probably lose interest. You know, you're the sort of person who likes to do it. Other people have a kind of longer, slower burn, if you like. Right. And they prefer to kind of keep at it for a longer period of time, but at a lower level. I've worked with, you know, one guy who did it all in a few weeks. I've worked with others who've taken 2 years.
Okay.
And that's, I suppose, the beauty of one-to-one working is that you can be personal in the way that you pace yourself.
Okay, no, that's really good because, like I said, you're right about that. I definitely am a man of action, and getting some of that stuff done. For me, it's a part of what I'm trying to accomplish. So, like, we have to keep moving. But I can understand how that might be a different motivation for others. All right, talk to us. Let's kind of shift gears a little bit and talk to us a little bit about the actual book writing process. So, like, all right, so the first thing that you want to do, if I'm just writing a book or if I'm listening to you, and maybe I work with you, maybe I don't, but like, what's the actual process? I think you've already given us a first step, which is the plan, right? And I was writing it down. What's the core message? Who is it for? Let's see here. Core message, who is it for? What do you want to get out of it? And a table of contents, I guess, during that initial planning session, which is fine. What's the next step in terms of if you were to give somebody some ideas on moving forward? What would be a good next step once they've got that planning session down, regardless if they work with you or not? Obviously, we hope they might if they want to, but like, what's a good next step for them from there?
Yeah, please. Sure. So after you've got your table of contents, what I suggest you do next is take every chapter and break it down into a number of bullet points. So we're not talking reams of text here. You're looking maybe no more than 2 or 3 pages of A4 in total in terms of the amount you're writing. You know, it's not, you actually don't want it to be too detailed. You want to be able to see the whole book in a few, short number of pages. And what those points will help you to do is to know what it is you're going to say, and I think a lot of people miss out this step, and it's a really
I was right. I wrote it down. I haven't heard that before. I didn't mean to talk over you, but that's a really good point. I love that. I didn't mean to talk over you.
I'll tell you the benefit of it. Well, there's 2 benefits really. The first is that in the process of doing that, you might realize that you haven't got as much to say as you thought you would about one particular
right.
You might have more in another that you hadn't really considered until you actually sit down and think about what you want to say.
Right.
So this is the way that you can avoid the heartbreak of having to reorganize and rejig things and restructure things halfway through the book when you realize this chapter's not going to work out, and this one would have been better earlier on. And it's only when you start to just make yourself drill down a little bit more that you get that sense of the whole book hanging together. And then the other benefit is that when you actually come to write the chapters, instead of sitting there scratching your head and thinking, well, what am I going to say? You actually know what you're going to say already because you've got the points you want to make. You just now need to write them. So what I tend to find is that the planning part of our mind and the creative part of our mind, the bit where we're actually writing the words on the page, they're kind of 2 different thought processes, and it's really tiring trying to switch back and forth between them all the time. And so if you're switching between planning and creating, it's just not a really helpful way to do it. And it means that when you have like just half an hour to write one day, you don't have a lot of time. You can go to your plan, you can see that point, and you can just bash out a few paragraphs about it. It doesn't have to be perfect, it's just a first draft, just get it out. And you tick the job off your list, and you've got that bit further with your book. If you didn't have the plan, you'd be sitting there thinking, well, what am I going to say next? And then 20 minutes would go by and you realize you haven't got as far as you want. So that, I think it's a really, really important step to take.
Okay. And then at that point, you're just grinding it out, it sounds like. So the first one is to do the overview. Second is to do kind of this mini kind of drill down. And then I would presume step 3 is just writing it. Like step two presents an opportunity for you to engage. Well, really steps one and two, but definitely step two, it sounds like gives you an opportunity to write your book faster, if I'm not mishearing you.
Yes, it is. It's definitely quicker. And when you're actually doing the writing of the first draft, again, what I always encourage people to do is just try not to be too judgmental about yourself while you're writing. It's really easy to think, oh, this is such a load of rubbish, or who's going to read this, or such. And we just do this to ourselves. It's kind of what we human beings seem to do. And you have to try and just ignore all of that and just keep moving forward. And yes, some of it will be a bit of a mess, and some of it will need a complete rewrite, and some of it won't be great, but some of it actually can be surprisingly good. And it's only when you look back on what you've written a few days later, you kind of tend to have a mixture of who wrote this rubbish and wow, I'm a genius, and everything in between. so let yourself go through that phase and try to avoid the temptation to go back and revise it and tweak it and all of that, because you'll just never get beyond the first chapter if you do that. You just need to keep moving forward, and later is the time to come back and revise it.
That's interesting. So your philosophy, that's interesting. So your philosophy is kind of, which I like, it's kind of like the old California Railroad. You have George, I forgot who it was. It was two companies, one on the right, East Coast, one on the left. We're talking almost colonial America. And then you go to the left, and they just kind of kept whoever could lay down the most track got the money. And then they met somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
So I forgot the two companies, like Georgia Pacific, I think was one of them. Anyway, the idea is, so you're just saying, which I like, you're talking about laying down the track, get this done, because from your perspective, which is totally fine, you're trying to really get people just to keep moving.
That's right. Yeah. Momentum is so important, and it's important for your morale as well, because when you can get through the chapters, even if they're not perfect, they won't be perfect. They definitely won't be. But if you can just keep moving forward and know that you've got another chapter done and this is the next step of the book now, it makes such a difference to your motivation, really, I think. And if you keep going back over and over it again, you just get bogged down.
That's really interesting, because one of the things, and you brought this up, I jotted it down because I wanted to circle back. You talked about this idea of momentum from a different perspective as well, which is being able to have momentum while you're writing it. You alluded to the 30-minute block that, people usually find themselves in. This is back when we were talking about step one and the importance of having a plan. And, I think I can speak for myself, and it sounds like that you would agree. When you have the energy, when you have the motivation, when you have the expertise, because writing can be a fleeting little creature, okay? It can be a feisty little bird, because you have it. Like, how many times have you had it where, maybe you're not personally, I don't know, but I have, where you have a great thought and you're like, oh, okay, that's great. And then you sit down to write, and it's like it just completely, literally flew the coop. So I love this idea of being able to do the momentum. And it sounds like, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like what you're doing is you're really making it easy. The key for what you're doing is back to the opening point. There's going to be time. You need to make it a priority. If it was easy, we would have 1 million books more than what we have right now. It's not easy. But with all of that said, it sounds like part of your value proposition is making it easier vis-a-vis the plan, vis-a-vis the planning session, vis-a-vis the strategy, and vis-a-vis this mini kind of outline, so that you can be more diligent, and this momentum piece, so that you can be more diligent while you're doing it. That's what it sounds like to me, and I love that.
Yeah. And I think as well, what working with somebody else can give you, and it doesn't really matter too much whether it's a coach or whether maybe it's a writing group or some feedback partners, is that it also helps to remove some of the doubt, the self-doubt that comes with writing a book. And if you have somebody to give you feedback, you've removed some of that element of, oh, is this any good? Am I getting my message across? Will people want to read this? Yeah, all of those kind of things that we all think when we're writing a book. And that is hugely helpful as well, because I think what underlies the kind of unifying factor between all the people who actually finish a book in the end is that they had enough self-belief and persistence to get to the end. And you do need to have some self-belief, and anything that can help you to have that is a good thing. So yeah, other input is is really helpful.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, listen, where is it that people can find you if they, this was some, I knew this was going to be good. Where is it that people can find you either online or connect with you or whatever the case may be? Because this is some really good stuff. And I know that a lot of people are potentially, well, let me put it to you this way. I know a lot of people are interested in writing a book, and I know that it could help a lot of people. So if they were to take a next step with you, where would they go?
Yeah, so, well, they can go to my website, which is marketing21.co.uk. So that's marketing21 in letters.co.uk. And there you can find my blog, which has got absolutely loads of tips and advice on writing a book. Any subject under the sun that you're having a problem with, there will be something in there for you. Even if you just want a bit of inspiration or a bit of entertainment, there's lots of advice on there.
Awesome, awesome. And let's also not forget, because you've mentioned it, but I don't feel like I've really articulated it. There's two things that you do. You work with people if they're looking to write a book themselves, and you also work with people on a ghostwriting standpoint where you take on a lot of the lion's share, I would presume. We didn't really get into that because I don't feel that that's as much of at least this audience maybe listening right now, but certainly it's a part and maybe a big part of what you do, the actual ghostwriting itself. So I just want to be clear that people understand that those are two different things and very much related. Well, this was awesome. I think I can speak for the audience listening that I was taking some notes, doing some different things. And I think it was really, really good to be able to hear you and talk. So that is Ginny Carter, business book ghostwriter and book coach. My name is Brian Hilliard saying so long, take care, and thanks so much for your time.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.